encounter with pure evil.
This happened close to 14 years ago, when I was pregnant with my first child. My husband and I had gone to a friend's house one night for a bonfire and hayride party. There were a lot of people there, and we knew quite a few, but some groups brought people we didn't know. The hayride was taking off soon, so I told my husband we should go on it. We had slipped out of the house, and I knew this guy was still in the house. I just wanted to get away from him. We loaded up on the wagon and got situated. Seconds before we took off, the guy suddenly jumps up in the wagon and squeezes in a spot directly across from me. The entire ride, he stared, eyes boring into my soul. And honestly, this might sound super odd, but I had this overwhelming sense he wanted to kill my baby. I can't explain it. I just felt this overpowering sense of evil. And how can you share this with someone else without sounding like you've lost your mind? So I didn't say anything to anyone. When we got back, I told my husband I didn't feel well, and we should head out. With my large belly and all, he didn't question it, and we left. Fast forward a few years later, we visited a church of the same friend that held the party. And who should be there but that guy? Except this time, he had toned down his looks quite a bit, and his body language was more relaxed. I immediately sensed he was a different person than I encountered years ago. My husband struck up a conversation with this guy for a while, but I decided to keep my distance. Afterwards, my husband told me how this guy had completely changed his life, how he had once been deep into satanic stuff and seen evil spirits. And then he shared the one thing that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up straight. Do you remember seeing him at the bonfire years ago? You won't believe it. He said he was at his lowest point at that time. He said he constantly heard voices telling him to kill people, and it was all he could do to not listen to them. Angry and unnerving coworker escalates his behavior. This happened a handful of years ago. We had a transfer come on the team from another department within the company. He was nearly completely deaf, meaning he could hear really loud noises, but nothing else. He did quite well speaking out loud, and he read lips to understand what was being said to him. No big deal. It was an easy adjustment to make. Sure, you had to face him when you talked to him, and you had to speak one at a time. He was a decent team member in the beginning, but after a while, started making comments to me and the only other female on the team. Things like, "Why haven't you made the coffee yet?" And just stupid old school jokes that made fun of women. My role gave him instructions on customer requests/needs. He would often not follow the instructions, and I would get calls from customers complaining. Often I had to let him know he had to go back and fix the work so it matched the original request. Afterwards, he would storm into my office and yell at me as if his inability to read and follow simple instructions were my fault. I got tired of it. It said, "Do your job right the first time, and there wouldn't be any complaints." This, of course, didn't go over well with him. His anger was very unnerving. I got the feeling it wasn't going to stop there. In the following weeks, he would intentionally block doorways I would be trying to go through. One time, I was in the other female worker's small office, and he blocked the entire doorway. He stood there and smiled, this super creepy smile, as if he was saying,
What are you going to do about it?
I refused to touch him, to try and push past him. The other lady kept looking at me like she was beyond uncomfortable too. It was like we read each other's mind, and we kept having our own conversation about something work related and just ignored him. After several minutes, he left. Another time, I had to go to the far back of the warehouse to organize some stuff in the room. I remember going in and thinking, okay, there are 2 cameras and they can see this main hallway, but not between the shelving units. I had the uneasy feeling he would come back there. Sure enough, a few minutes later, he came barging in the room and came right at me. I had already been on high alert, so I quickly exited the other door in the room and booked it back to where the rest of the team was. I pulled up the security cameras to see if he had a reason to be in there. Sure enough, he paced in the room for a few minutes after I bolted, and then he just left. He clearly had no reason to be in there that exact moment I was in there. I shared this with a male coworker friend, and he said he would go back with me to any of the spaces away from the main team areas. I had to get my work done, but I didn't trust I could do it without this angry guy finding me. Anytime we would make comments about his anger or demeaning jokes, the manager would say,
"Oh, maybe he didn't understand because you talked too fast. I bet it was just a misunderstanding."
as if having a disability means you can't also be a disgusting person. Not too long after that, I heard from a teammate that this angry guy had grabbed the other female's upper thigh, literally right below her private area, squeezed and said,
Does this make you uncomfortable?
then laughed. A few teammates witnessed it, but didn't know what to do. As the other female worker froze up, I immediately went to HR and told them everything he had been doing to intimidate, belittle, trap, and of course, the harassment. He was fired the next day. When they escorted him out, he yelled,
This is retaliation.
HR would ask me what I would make of that comment. And all I could think was, it had to do with me standing my ground. I was so scared to see him show up unexpectedly. I told my family what he looked like, his tattoos, the car he drove, anything that would identify him. Since they never met him, I blocked him from every social media platform too. After he was let go, other females came forward and shared things he said or did to them too. They had told managers, but they dismissed it because the guy is deaf and they didn't want to deal with any lawsuits. As much as I hate what he did to my coworker, I'm grateful it gave that final boost to get him fired. Took my dog out to use the bathroom. Shadow, my 115-pound German Shepherd Black Lab mix, started to signal that she had to use the bathroom at about 1:15 a.m. Annoyed because I was almost asleep, I got up, put a hoodie on, and took her out with nothing but my phone for a flashlight. She started to do the usual sniff for about 15 minutes just to go in the regular spot routine. I had my flashlight on her because she is camouflaged by the night, and I would like to know where she's at so she doesn't run off. Just as she's starting to use the bathroom, I turn away and notice someone. They're standing at the very edge of my yard. Looking back at my dog, I noticed that she wasn't paying attention to the person yet, so I called her to me and attached her leash. The person just stood there and watched me. I called out to them and said, "You need to leave my yard," to which I got silence back. I cleared my throat and repeated myself, eventually attempting a third time just to change it up to, "Don't make me tell you again, you're going to leave my yard." Just as my partner was coming outside to see what the commotion was, they took a few steps forward, clearly intended to continue towards me. They caught a glimpse of my partner, backpedaled, turned around, and left. As confused as he was, I was in complete shock. We've had to run this one person off our property because they would bring their dog over to use the bathroom in our yard, but it wasn't them. I've seen their face, and it was not them. They haven't been back, but right before that, we did find footprints near our shed and window of our home. Genuinely unnerved, I contacted the police, and they didn't do anything other than take a statement. Been told it'll go nowhere until physical harm or a break-in happens.